Right, this is Team 2564, and we're working on the calibration backend. So this first method of our testing, our RSpec testing, basically just goes through, gives a valid assignment ID, and tries to get the correct output. And so it basically just gives, we just have a setup here, creating the assignment, the instructor, the reviewee, and then the response map for that. We did try to implement the submitted content controller from the other group, but we found that it had a few issues when we were trying to implement it into the current project. There were actually 66 failing test cases, not ours, but throughout the entire program, 66 failing test cases. So I thought it'd be best to hold off on implementing that just because it doesn't seem to be working quite correctly. I did put in here just the code to implement that once the submitted content controller is functioning correctly. So this runs pretty good, and I'll show that at the end. So then next we have the calibration student report, and what this does is it gets the just a specific calibration student report for a specific calibration report, I guess. So basically you give the assignment ID and the student participant ID, and then it basically just aggregates the values and the score for that specific review and how close it is to the calibration assignment. And so we just have 3 tests in this one. So the first one basically just does a valid one with a valid team and a valid response. The second one tests to see if the when the data is missing. So basically this is like whenever one of the calibration reviews just doesn't have some of the data. And so basically just testing that it gives the error correctly. And then the last one is then there's just no maps. So there's no calibration map to that review. So there's no calibration that it can do, essentially. And this basically just makes sure that it tells you, hey, there's nothing for me to do. Then nextly we go into the summary function, which basically just gets all of the reviews, not just calibration reviews. And it also gives it in an array format, which tells whether or not it's a calibrated review or not. And that's basically for the other team that's working on the front end, so that they can have a way for the user to click on an individual review and set them as calibrated, or to go through and calibrate them. And so basically this one has 3 as well. So the first one basically just does when everything's working, everything's honky-dory. Basically has a few participants and the summaries, and it also ensures that it handles multiple members in a team. Again, we have the submitted content helper here for when it is in a working state. We then have the thing when a student or assignment doesn't exist. Basically, it's just a test. Just tests that if you give it a random ID, it doesn't just randomly do something. It has to be a valid ID. And then the last one, oh, there's only 2. My bad. My bad. And then the last one, the calibration assignment, it basically just gets the all the values needed for a reviewee and the assignment ID. So you give the assignment ID and then whoever you need to calculate the values for. And it does it automatically via our program. And so this basically, the first one just assumes that everything's correct, everything's working fine. And then the second one tests to make sure that you have to give a certain valid calibration. Like, so if one of the reviews doesn't have a calibration assignment, it can't do any calibrating. And so now we can run it real quick. And it just takes a second. And there you go. 9 tests all passing, 0 failures, and we have 564 lines of coverage. And inside of our file, I think there are 570, so like 90-some%, if I remember correctly. Yep, we have 588, so about 90-some% line coverage.